us. Sorry we're running a few minutes late this evening. I am going to turn it over to Mrs. Simpkins for our calendar hearing.
Good evening, everyone. We will now hold a hearing regarding the proposed start date for the 2019-2020 school year as indicated on the draft calendar per state statute. The proposed date for the start of school on the draft calendar is Thursday, August 8th, 2019. I have provided copies of the draft calendar to the board and to the audience there at the desk, and we would invite any comments at this time. Seeing no comments, we will close our calendar hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sorry for the delay. We're having a busy evening tonight. Thank you, Ms. Simpkins, for the calendar hearing. Board, with it being 7:10, I call the Francis Howell School District Board of Education meeting to order. This evening, we are going to have Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by Connor Baquette, who is a Francis Howell Union Student Board representative this evening.
I believe Connor's also working on his Eagle Scout badge. Is that correct, Connor?
Yes, sir. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Board, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as submitted. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson. By roll call.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is recognition, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Dykeman.
I think we have FHU Principal Rob Goff here, who's going to introduce Connor. Introduce Connor, who's already up there.
Introduced. Good evening. Connor, who is a student at Francis Howell Union in the Missouri Options Program, he's attended the Francis Howell School District his entire life. Henderson, Hollenbeck, Francis Howell North, and Francis Howell Union. He will continue his education at Rankin Technical College next fall in the High Performance Motorsports program. The staff at FHU really enjoys having Connor as a student. Our communications arts teacher, Stacey Rodriguez, said, "We love teaching students like Connor and helping them get a new start in life. Connor's always kind, respectful, and compassionate. He simply needed an alternative place to learn. We're thankful that we could provide that for him, and he will be very successful at Rankin." And Connor agrees that FHU was able to help him. He gave FHU gave him a second chance to act and succeed rather than continue a cycle of failure. Those are his words. He credits the ISAP teacher at Francis Howell North, Mr. Parker, for really encouraging him to look into Francis Howell Union. Connor says that Mr. Parker is one of the most influential people in his life because he was blunt with him about life and it helped him change his mindset about school. Connor said applying to Union and attending Union is the best decision he's ever made. And we're just thankful that Connor did come to Union, so congratulations.
Yeah, Carter.
Mom and Dad, you want to get in the picture?
One more. Thank you.
And then Connor, if you would stay up here for just a minute, because we're going to continue in the Connor vein. I have a story to tell about Connor. It was rush hour on a busy residential street. Connor was at home, working on his car. Sounds like it's something he does often. It was just another night until he heard the scream. When he looked up, he saw a stroller with a baby careening down the hill. Connor immediately jumped up and started running after it. He grabbed it and stopped the stroller right before it hit a patch in the concrete. The child's mother ran up and gave Connor a big hug, and that was enough for him, but not enough for the family. The next day, they appeared on his doorstep. They gave him a card and a picture of the little girl who he had saved, and the mom also nominated Connor for the St. Peter's Random Acts of Kindness Award, which he later received at City Hall. Connor? That one picture could do double duty, Connor. We have Sean O'Donnell, Area VP of Spectrum, is here. Sean, if you'd come on up. The Francis Howell School District is proud to partner with Spectrum as the flagship sponsor of our new CAPS program. CAPS will begin with one core strand, Technology Solutions, and will launch next month. Students will gain professional skills in high-demand, high-skill technology solution careers such as software engineering, graphic design, web development, and IT network support. Much of that work to be done at the Spectrum office in Maryland Heights using Spectrum mentors in technology. We'd like to thank Spectrum and its representatives for the opportunities they will be providing to our students. Sean, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Good evening. We're about as excited as we can be to get this thing off the ground finally. Myself, John, Nicole, Chris, Kara Dalton, we've spent a lot of hours trying to work and put this thing together, but it's finally happening. 2 weeks from today, we're gonna have 15 students? 15 students in our building, learning not only about technology, how to develop real world solutions. They're gonna be solving real problems that we have. In fact, I have in trying to run my business here in across Missouri and Illinois. And really be able to get that real world exposure, take the learning in the classroom and apply it in a real life setting, add value, and learn a lot about our really cool business. We're hoping to really build long-term relationships with these students. We want to get them interested in technology. We want them to graduate from the Howell system, go to college, be summer interns with us, and come back here to St. Charles County as great employees for the future. So we couldn't be more excited about this program. We're so grateful for the opportunity. And thank you to the team here who's done an amazing job of putting this together. I really think, thank you also to the board for funding this thing, because it's our opinion at Spectrum, this is one of the ways we should be educating our kids of tomorrow. So thank you for making this happen. We're thrilled to be a partner in this. Thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight. And we really look forward to it. John, we can't wait to see you in our building in 2 weeks.
Awesome.
All right, great.
more.
Thanks to a partnership with the Cottleville Firefighters Outreach, nearly 500 Francis Howell students in need received brand new winter coats this year. The firefighters with the Cottleville Fire Protection District raised $14,000 and worked with Operation Warm, a national not-for-profit dedicated to providing new winter coats to needy kids. Student Services AA Deanna Cruz facilitated the program to make sure the kids who needed the coats got them before winter. These coats are 100% sourced and manufactured in America and support hundreds of jobs. That's a win-win for our students and our economy. Here with us tonight from the Cottleville Fire Protection District, Assistant Chief Skip Stevens and Firefighter Garrett Ryan, as well as our own Deanna Cruz. Guys, come on up.
Squeeze in there, Connor. One more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Coe.
Next on our agenda is our comment section. We do not have any patron comments this evening. FHEA.
Good evening, Board President Coe and Dr. Hendricks Harris and the Board and Executive Cabinet. I want to wish everybody happy holidays. I know we will have a lot on our plates when we get back, and hopefully everyone will come back rejuvenated because they've had a great break. Everybody take deep breaths, and thank you for everything that you do. Happy holidays to all of you.
Thank you very much. PSPA. SAA. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, second by Mr. Lang. By roll call.
Mr. Lane,
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Next on our agenda is a best practice of family engagement, and I'll turn that over to Dr. Garland.
Good evening, Board of Education and Executive Cabinet. It's my privilege tonight to present the best practice on family engagement with Dr. Bridget Niedringhouse and Mrs. Mary Calkins. A goal for our district is to partner with our families to ensure that our students' needs are being met academically, socially, and emotionally. Over the many, many years, the focus has always been on involving our parents. Times have changed over the years, as you can see by looking at these pictures. Our vocabulary alone could be excluding some of the caretakers and supporters of our students. The term parent is often interpreted as the biological parent, but we know in these times that our students are being raised by other adults or other family members. It's important that we continue to be inclusive in our practice, ensuring that our students, our support system, are valued as partners in their education. The district, as you know, places a strong emphasis on family engagement. Each school incorporates many effective practices to ensure that our families are engaged at all times. As we continue to evolve in our practices, we are focused on the key components of effective partnerships. Our goal this year has been to ensure that activities are more linked to learning, which means that the activities are helping parents see just exactly what their kids are learning at school and how they can partner with our families to do so. Mary Calkins, our principal at the Early Childhood Center, is going to start by presenting one of her practices, Digging with Dads.
Good evening. In 2012, our Digging with Dads event received recognition from Johns Hopkins University as a promising partnership practice. Ever since, it has become an annual event for our school. This year alone, we had over 128 families attend, not just dads, but uncles and grandfathers and others alike. It is a collaborative effort involving teachers, parents, and community members. The focus of the event is to encourage dads to become involved in the school environment while learning activities that support academic and physical development in the home. These activities are linked to supporting areas of development to include fine motor, gross motor, math, and English language arts. All of the activities are also designed to be replicated at home to support that learning at home piece. As stated before, this is a collaborative effort. We have community partnership with St. Charles County Library. Lori has been part of our team now for several years. They provide families lots of resources and support throughout the year. We also partner with Francis Howell High School. This year we had support from the boys soccer team and the coaches. They supported each station and engaged the students and the dads in all the learning activities.
And Dr. Bridget Niedringhouse is here to present their Fine Arts Night.
Good evening. Casley has long been a community that has had a great deal of parent involvement. So as we took the focus from parent involvement to engaging families, we were really truly looking for those opportunities to look outside the typical family unit and engage everyone in those learning opportunities. The Fine Arts Night did that by using community partnerships that we've developed to bring in outside sources and help families get involved in understanding how fine arts can help develop their child as a whole. They had opportunities for demonstrations. It activated new learning and new knowledge, and families were able to participate together side by side in activities that were provided for them. In this opportunity, we were able to link learning with the family engagement, building a bridge between the families and the school, helping them to see some of the community resources right here that are available to them, and to build an understanding of learning expectations and what they can do to support at home, which makes it a win-win for all of us.
Those are just two of the activities that are happening across our district that are engaging our families and that are more linked to learning. As you can see just by glancing at this slide, this is a variety of the activities that are happening across the districts at all levels that we would say are engaging our families, and they're linked to learning, which means again that they're supporting, the parents are learning about what their kids are learning at school, they're learning how to partner, and they're seeing models for how they can support their kids at home. We're very proud of all the efforts that all of our buildings put into place to ensure that our families are engaged, and as you know, we've been recognized by Johns Hopkins through the National Network of Partnership Schools, through Promising Practices and Partnership Awards. So as a district, there's always room for growth, but we are certainly headed down the right road. And what we hear from our parents is that they feel very connected to our school and they feel like they belong, which is a step in the right direction. Thank you. At this time, we'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Anyone have questions? Mr. Hain?
Yeah, I really don't have a question, but I do have comment. I was able to participate in the Digging with Dads with my grandson, and it was a great program. We planted flowers, and I don't know how many of them survived with the kids planting them as they were stepping on the other ones that other kids planted, but they understood the whole process and it was really a great event. And I do want to emphasize on the family inclusiveness because, it was, okay, well, grandpas can come, moms can come, aunts or uncles can come. Anybody who's there that, knows the kid and is helping to support the kid is welcome to come. And I just want to point that out, it was a very welcoming environment, and the kids really did learn a lot. So I want to thank you guys for doing those types of programs.
Thank you. And that was one of the events, actually, over the summer, our administrators had some learning around how just to tweak the events that were already in place to link them more to learning. And that was one of the events that last year, Meadows Parkway, dads had fun, but Mary, being who she is, thought, how can we tweak that event to link it more to learning? And you saw the benefits of that. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Chris, can I put you on the spot for a minute?
Sure.
Can you talk for a minute about the expectations we have of our buildings in regards to family involvement?
Oh, absolutely.
And I'm sorry I didn't submit that question ahead of time.
And you know what? It was in my presentation, but I was nervous at first and I skipped right over it. So all of our buildings are required in their school improvement plans to incorporate the 6 keys of effective family engagement. And those are the keys that you may or may not be familiar with from Johns Hopkins research, Dr. Joyce Epstein. They are parenting, communication, volunteering, learning at home, decision making, and then community involvement. And so what our buildings do is they ensure that each area of their school improvement plan incorporates at least one of those keys, but all 6 keys have to be present in the plan. And I work with buildings and partner with buildings to help them, create action steps that are meaningful and that support the families as well as support the students.
I thought it was interesting too, as the program partnered with the high school, and that helps the student see where they can be. And I think that's a great opportunity. I'm not sure who got dirtier though in the picture, if it was the soccer team or the actual early childhood kids.
Yep. The soccer team had a great time. They were so energetic and just really, really took the opportunity to really submerge and engage themselves with the kids, which was awesome. And we had I think that evening we had about 9 alum so that had graduated from Meadows and were part of the soccer team and came back to help. So that was kind of neat. We have a pretty cool picture of
That's
some of the kids
amazing.
with the alum.
That's
So.
great. Ms. Ferguson.
I just want to say that I really enjoy the piece that you include everybody, aunts, uncles, or whoever, because sometimes little Johnny, and I just picked that name out of thin air, his mommy's working or, whatever, that keeps them engaged also, and they keep them excited. And I also see that when you engage with aunts and the uncles and all that, it makes it more fun. I mean, I even was asked by my nephew's grandson, could I come to an event at, his school, and I was just so privileged, and I had so much fun. And it was just a kindergarten class, but it was great. But he was excited because I took the time out of my time, and that he has extended family, and it makes a big difference.
We just wanted the board to be aware, because you may hear less of the term parent involvement, which is typically what we've said. We're trying really to shift to family engagement.
Family engagement sounds
so that we are inclusive of everybody and people feel valued, regardless of what regardless of how they're supporting that child. Thank you very much.
Thank you. For next on our agenda is our academic high target, looking at the 2019-2020 school calendar. So board, I'll entertain a motion to approve the 2019-2020 school calendar as presented.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson. Mrs. Simpkins.
I don't have anything further to add as we reviewed the calendar in our work session last month, but I'll be happy to answer any questions that the board has.
Great, thank you. Board, do you have any questions about the calendar? We did cover that in work session this last time. Okay. By roll call?
Ms. Ferguson,
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda is the MSBA board report.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Missouri School Boards Association's board report. We thank you for the opportunity to share some news and information during a few minutes of your board meeting. We begin with a look at the search for Missouri's new Commissioner of Education. During a special conference call on December 14th, the State Board of Education voted 5-3 to start accepting applications for the position of Commissioner of Education on December 15th and close applications on January 8th, one day before the next regular meeting of the State Board of Education. The 5 members who voted for the accelerated timeline for accepting applications were all the recent appointees of Governor Greitens. State Board President Charlie Shields, Vice President Vic Lenz, and member Mike Jones voted against the motion and argued for a longer timeline and a more deliberate search process. Lenz said during the conference call, closing the application process on January 8th does not allow enough time for the State Board to get adequate input on the search.
I would tell you it's a slap in the face to educators, it's a slap in the face to legislators, it's a slap in the face to executives over at the governor's office if you ask for the application to go out without having gotten their input before you do it, before you start the process even. It just doesn't make sense. It's not the way you would do a high-level application for a high-level job.
All 5 of the recent appointees to the State Board of Education still face confirmation by the Missouri Senate when it convenes for its 2018 session. Senators from both parties have expressed concerns about the apparent attempt by Governor Greitens to orchestrate the firing of former Commissioner Margie Van Dieven on December 1st, putting those confirmations in jeopardy. The 2018 session of the General Assembly is upon us, and numerous education issues will once again be on the agenda for lawmakers, not the least of which is state funding for K-12 education. It will take a $98 million increase in the foundation formula to fully fund the basic state aid program for schools. $48 million of that would go toward new early childhood education funding triggered by a fully funded formula. MSBA Associate Executive Director for Advocacy, Mike Reed, says the budget will be challenging once again this year.
There are going to be a lot of demands in the budget. A number of places are going to be asking for increases in money, plus the fact that halfway through through this year, this fiscal year, we have a tax decrease coming in. So there's a real question on how much funds will be available for the chairman of the House Budget Committee and the Senate Budget Committee to work with. There'll be a lot more demands than we have appropriations available. And so that's going to be a really, really big topic for much of the year of where's the money going to come from and how are we going to split it up.
Other issues likely to be considered once again in the General Assembly are expansion of charter schools throughout the state and voucher schemes such as education savings accounts that funnel public money to private schools that are not accountable to the public. MSBA will keep you informed about legislative developments during the session through our weekly Legislative Voice newsletter, our Capitol Watch video program, our daily updates on Twitter, and through critical issue alerts. And be sure to mark your calendar for the MSBA Legislative Forum Public Schools Day at the Capitol, scheduled for February 13th in Jefferson City. You can register for that event through the MSBA website. School board members throughout the state will be honored for their work during School Board Recognition Week, January 21st through 27th. It's a great opportunity for communities to honor local school board members who provide leadership to our local school districts throughout the state. Check the MSBA website for resources related to School Board Recognition Week. That's it for this month's edition of the MSBA Board Report. Thanks for allowing us to have some time at your board meeting, and so long from Columbia.
Next on our agenda is our fiscal responsibility section. Board, I'll entertain a motion
motion to approve the November 2017 financial statements as presented?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, seconded by Mr. Lane. Comments, concerns? Ms. Walker?
I just wanna make sure I'm understanding, we have almost $2.5 million more this year than we had same time last year, is that accurate?
That's correct, because we ended last year with a surplus of revenue over expense, so it's essentially that amount that's being carried over.
Any other questions? By roll call?
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I entertain a motion to approve the purchases over $7,500 as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Ferguson, seconded by Mr. Lang. Comments? Questions? By roll call?
Mr. Hain?
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Board, I entertain a motion to approve the 2016-2017 audit and annual report as presented.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Ferguson, and I'll turn that over to Mr. Rick Grazza for a presentation for us regarding the results of KEB's audit.
Well, good evening, members of the Board of Education, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to present the results of our audit for the year ended June 30th, 2017. So essentially our audit can be broken down into three different pieces. Of course, we audit the financial statements, but we also audit the district's compliance with federal programs and the district's compliance with various attributes of state compliance. First, we're going to talk about the financial statements. Just as a reminder, it is management's responsibility to prepare the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Our responsibility as auditors is to express an opinion on the fair presentation of those financial statements. We did perform our audit in accordance with 3 separate sets of auditing standards, including generally accepted auditing standards, government auditing standards, and the uniform guidance. As a result of performing our audit, we issued what's called an unmodified opinion. It's the best of 3 possible opinions that we can render. What that means is that based on our test work, we found the financial statements to be fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, or GAAP. In addition to performing our test work, or as part of that test work, we do look at the district's internal control. If we were to identify any opportunities to strengthen internal control, we would bring those to your attention. We did identify one material weakness in internal control, and that's related to our proposed audit adjustments to assist the district in converting from the cash basis to the accrual basis, or GAAP basis, of accounting. I should mention, though, that the district is one of only a very small handful of districts to make the extra effort to prepare the financial statements on a more comprehensive basis of accounting. We are required to test the district's compliance with requirements that could have a material effect on the financial statements, and in doing so, we found no non-compliance. So the second part of our audit is where we test the district's compliance with various aspects of its federal programs. Each year we look at a sample of federal programs. We usually pick our federal programs using a risk-based approach. We tend to focus on those programs that expend more in federal dollars, and those programs that we haven't audited in the last couple of years. This year we audited the Child Nutrition Cluster, Title I, and Title IIA. Again, as a result of that audit, we issued an unmodified opinion, the best of 3 possible opinions we can render. And in this case, what that means is that we found that the district complied in all material respects with the requirements of those 3 programs. And we had we identified no material weaknesses in internal control. And then the third and final piece of our audit is regarding state compliance. Specifically, we test the district's compliance with budgetary and disbursement procedures, attendance records, and transportation records. We perform this examination in accordance with the attestation standards established by the AICPA, and in doing so, again, we issued an unmodified opinion. And lastly, in addition to our 3 audit opinions that accompany your financial statements, our professional standards promulgated by the AICPA require that we give you, the Board of Education, some additional information about the results of our audit. All those additional required communications are outlined here in the next couple of slides. First, all the significant accounting policies that the district uses in preparing their financial statements are outlined in Note 1 to the financial statements. And as I previously mentioned, the district is one of just a few in the state that make the extra effort to prepare the financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There were no new accounting policies adopted this year, so when you're comparing current year financial information to prior year, you know that they've been prepared on a consistent basis of accounting. You're comparing apples to apples. There were no complex or controversial transactions that lacked authoritative guidance or consensus, and all transactions were reported in the proper period. There are some accounting estimates included in the financial statements. We do audit those estimates to make sure that all the factors, key factors and assumptions used to develop those estimates are reasonable. We encountered no difficulties in performing our audit. Kevin and Cindy did a fantastic job in preparing for us. No disagreements with management regarding any auditing, accounting, or reporting matters. We did propose some adjustments to the financial statements. All those adjustments that we proposed were accepted by management and are reflected in the financial statements. Upon conclusion of the audit engagement, we asked management to provide us with what we call a management representation letter. In that letter, they certified to us that they believe the financial statements are complete and accurate, and they provided us all the information, all the relevant information that might be impactful to our audit. As far as we know, management didn't consult with any other independent accountants to get a second opinion on any complex or controversial accounting matter. The last thing I just wanted to point out, there are a couple of changes, or upcoming changes to the accounting standards that will have an effect on the district. First, GASB statement number 75, accounting and financial reporting for post-employment benefits other than pensions. So this will require governments to report the unfunded status of the retiree health insurance program on the statement of net financial position or the balance sheet. This is very similar to the standard that we implemented 2 years ago that required the unfunded status of the pensions to be reported on the financial statements. And that'll be effective for fiscal year 2018. And then also GASB statement number 87, leases. So this will require all governments to report their leases as a liability on the statement of net position or the balance sheet. And again, that will be effective for the fiscal year 2021. So just a couple new changes in the accounting standards to get ready for. And again, just in conclusion, I'd like to thank Kevin and Cindy. Again, they did a terrific job in preparing for us, allowed us to be very efficient in our time here at the district. So be glad to take any questions.
Board, any questions? I think you prepared quite a bit of information. Mr. Supple?
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Cope. I would, on behalf of the district, like to thank Mr. Grazza and especially Amber Hardesty, who is the lead who serves on our account. They do a great job for us, and I would also be remiss not to point out that Cindy Reilman, our Director of Finance, takes the primary lead on the audit, and there's a tremendous amount of detail work associated with that. She does a fantastic job. And my assistant, Angie Saxer, helps to coordinate a lot of the data. So it's just a lot of work, and just publicly I'd like to thank both of them for their hard work, and again, Rick and his team for all that they did to help us get through this audit.
Great, I know how much time. So I do compliance for a living, so I know how much time that can take, and I do appreciate all the hard work. Any questions from the board on any of the information provided at this time? Very thorough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So board, we do have a motion on the table to approve the 2016-17 audit and annual report as presented. By roll call.
Mrs. Lang?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0.
next on the agenda is the tax levy. We had a work session on this as well last meeting. Board, I'll entertain a motion to approve placing a 48-cent tax levy on the April 2018 ballot and to approve the ballot language as presented.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Lang, seconded by Mr. Hain. Discussion or comment? By roll call.
Ms. Walker?
Aye.
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 Motion carries 7-0. Board, next on the agenda is strategic planning. I'll entertain a motion to open negotiations for the 2018-19 school year with all employee groups as of December 21st, 2017 as presented. Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Lang. Comment, question? Mr. Hain.
Yeah, I have a question. I know this was brought to me last year and somebody asked me again this year. Are these negotiations going to be open to the public, or are these going to be in closed session? Or has that been determined yet?
I don't think we've had a discussion on that one or the other. I think the assumption at this point was we would continue as we've done in the past. If we need to add that to a discussion, we can. I just don't know we've brought it forward for a conversation.
It wasn't stipulated one way or the other, so
I
I just was trying to clarify if we were doing it in an open session or were we doing it in closed session.
I see, and it was not part of the motion, you're correct there. So do we need to amend the motion? We can
You don't need to, you can open negotiations without determining your exact process, and then you can make that determination at a future time.
Okay. Board, would we like to proceed in that direction? We do have that motion on the table. Yes, okay. So the motion on the floor is just to open negotiations for the 2018-19 school year, and that motion was made by Mrs. Walker and seconded by Mrs. Lang. Any other questions or comments? By roll call.
Mr. Lang?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next on the agenda under strategic planning is our committee updates. As we decided this year, each of our board members that represent one of our strategic planning committees brings forward information on the status of those committees. So this evening, we have myself, Mrs. Walker, Mr. Hain, and Mr. Lang all reporting. We want to work this direction. We'll go with you, Mrs. Walker.
All right, so the technology committee is discussing where do we go from smart boards. So believe it or not, that technology is somewhat outdated now. We're discussing smart board versus smart panel. There's a smart panel installed at Fairmont, so the committee met there. And so that's kind of the discussion and the direction that committee is going is where do we go from smart boards?
No results yet?
Not yet.
All right, I'll go next. So I am on the Human Resource Committee. So at our last meeting, we spent some time getting an update on our monthly substitute fill rate, which we have been challenged with here recently. But we're hoping to have a little relief as our retired teachers become eligible in the second semester to help with that. We got also talked about our 2018 and 2019 staffing plan, which we're going to go over in our work session today. And I think one of the other exciting things we discussed was the Meet FHSD invitation flyer, which is a recruiting opportunity that we're looking at this year. And so excited to launch that February 3rd for any interested new candidates coming to Francis House School District. So please let me get in my little plug for that. Thank you, Mrs. Coe. But the committee is moving along very well. I like the structure. We do a set of information, then we have a set of input opportunities, and then we do some follow-up on the input to close the circle. So it's a good process that we're following on that team. Any questions for HR right now? Mr. Lang?
Policy committee, we didn't meet, so therefore there's nothing to report tonight, and our next policy committee is set for January 29th.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for you then, if you didn't.
So what'd you do with your time?
Mr. Hain.
Facilities, we've had 3 meetings so far. The first one, we talked about the potential for heritage expansion due to increasing and expanding some programs there. The second meeting, we had a presentation brought to us for long-term planning. An architect came in and gave us information on that. Basically, they did survey all of our buildings and facilities and tell us, what meets code, what doesn't meet code. It'd be encompassing our entire district to say, where do we need improvements, where don't we need improvements, what can we do and what can't we do. And then the third meeting, we had energy performance contracts. I'm sure everybody's heard about those. They're basically things where a company comes in and says, well, I can save you by replacing your lights, or I can save you by increasing changing your thermostats and stuff. And typically these things are paid for by the cost savings over a period of time, so they're no cost to the district. Expanding on the heritage expansion, there's a cost associated with anything that we do would be probably about $1 million, give or take. But due to increased utilization of our facility and being able to provide services internally instead of going outside of the district, we should be able to recover that cost in 5 to 7 years. So it's a pretty aggressive thing. So that'll be something that'll be coming forward later as we go through and review these, along with the long-term facilities planning and the energy performance. The other thing that we did get, we got a update on enrollment for the district, and we got nice little sheets saying where we have problems in the district and where we don't, and then we got like a 3 or 4 page things of all the new developments that are being proposed in the district. Some of them aren't even on paper yet, but they're already on our sheet, so I want to say kudos to the enrollment group that takes care of that for us, that they're on top of things and constantly looking to see where these new developments are coming and what potential we're going to have for students. A $500,000 subdivision may have has a different demographic and student, coming to the schools from 140 houses, the same number of houses that are in $200,000 range. Same thing for apartment complexes. So they're on top of that and giving us a 5-year plan, so how we can take care of that. So that's basically it.
So facilities plan for heritage include more parking?
Very minimal. The plans go to all of the boundaries.
All right, any questions for Mr. Hain? Thank you. All right, board, next on our agenda is our work session, which we'll be moving from here for this evening. So we'll take a 5-minute recess and convene down at the tables.
Sorry, I took it apart to pass out.
What do I have? Oh, you did that, okay.
No, I just took it.
Gotcha, I'm gonna get my keys and get my coffee.
Go right ahead. I'll pass these out then for the.
Hey, would it be better if I gave Renee this one and put the, you know?
Because she taught,
Yeah,
sure.
Okay, I feel welcome to the team.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. That's where all those papers are is where Renee's sitting, so it'd be better to, sorry, I'm just.
Take Lisa's.
Oh, look, I went.
He's got one on. I know,
I think Lisa is presenting. I gave each of you one.
I know, I saw it. Thank you. She takes care of me.
Yes, I feel like I missed a month and I feel like I'm doing this again. Okay, so these people.
No. Oh, yeah. No, that's a good thing.
Although.
Are you sitting here?
Yes, no?
Okay, you guys are the only ones that don't have a microphone, so I'm giving you this one. So it's on. So don't be whispering or telling jokes, guys, okay? Or do. Yes.
Yeah, really? Can't we just turn it off? It's,
Yes, we can, but then you have to remember to turn it on when you want to talk.
Just like you do these.
If you ask questions, you have to turn it on. Nobody yet.
I don't know all the answers. I don't know all the answers. I just don't have always.
is that right there? Yes, I will well be.
Oh, that would be a first.
That would be a first. That would be a tricky one for me.
Our senior class this year.
Yeah. We'll finish.
Yeah.
The last like 5 years, what's your budget?
Where are you gonna sit? Friday.
That's Renee.
That's Mike.
Who's sitting here?
I think that's Renee.
Boss?
Yes. It's just easier to see than on your screens. This is.
If I can write on it.
Oh, God.
Feel like
That's
that's
Can't
bad.
write on
This
it.
is really bad.
So I could get you a little stylus.
No, we have a microphone that's on at the time.
I was
We can't
kidding.
turn it off. Oh, Jesus. I was gonna say.
Okay, all right, since if she's like you, and I don't know, I'm gonna leave it on. But if you're gonna talk, you have to know to turn it off. Okay, I'm gonna leave it off. Then, talk amongst yourselves.
So just don't talk.
So it's off right now?
No,
Good,
yes.
oh, good, let's say what we want.
I'm saying, you
All
know
right.
what you have.
But I felt like every consensus.
It just says you're saying.
That's me.
I'm quitting AT&T.
Okay, baby. You're quitting AT&T.
After I was expecting that, oh my God. In fact, I called them again today because the past month, my internet.
No, baby, when I just turned it.
She could be trouble.
It's up.
Yeah.
Oh, I got tea. This guy has some coffee.
But one thing, Francis, it was like their invitation to the Fiscal meeting, but did you go to it, or did they just?
No, so I ran into him.
The other one was Kellogg and one was.
Oh, and he's like, oh, I remember the commercial. I'm like, where? How?
Well, it came after.
What is that? He's like, well, up at admin. I'm like, yeah, no, I know.
Because we hadn't had the meeting, and so.
Yeah, from John Walden.
Yeah, and that's why I told them, because Lisa's like, Lisa, I'm like, well, I haven't had a meeting yet, so I'm glad he ran into you, but I mean, I know it's too late, but, you know, I told her, I'm like, they're not here, you know, like, we're not scheduled to have a meeting before you write it.
Yes, I told him it would be end of December.
Yeah.
When I got it to the thing. Yeah. Email me. He's like, oh no. I know. Are we ready? Right. I have things. It's called dry shampoo.
Oh, yeah. Bananas and avocados. I didn't know it. I took a bite of it. You didn't see that part. No. I took a bite of the cake and I was like, oh, I'm like, that's a banana. You can. I'm really good. I learned it all right. Okay. I like that.
I guess more involved.
Morning, we ready?
Yes, ma'am. Right, okay.
Yeah, we gotta go back. We gotta go back to the bus.
There was a tender process.
Uh-oh, are you You're right. Are we ready to reconvene?
Yeah. Go for it.
Yes.
Speaker voice. Microphone's off. Can't fight.
I gave up. I mean, we could play it on.
Oh, yeah, I don't even close.
Boy.
All right. So first, Emma's gonna. I'll bring them by your house. They're all my china cabinet. All right, board. First on our work session agenda is the vacation station preschool 2018-2019 tuition. Mr. Supples.
Thank you, Mrs. Coe. Board members all received hard copies of the handouts that we're going to be discussing, and I've asked Mrs. Frame to put it up on the screen, understanding that it will be difficult for people to read it. But all of the handouts are on Board Docs, so anybody who would be watching the video can pull them up on Board Docs if they'd like to follow along as we discuss them. Just as a word of introduction, of course, our tuition-based programs are our vacation station, which is before and after school care for our regular K-12 kids, and then our preschool program for those who are getting ready to come into our K-12 program. I want to again thank Susan Lane, who is the administrator for our tuition-based programs, and Cindy Rowland, who worked very hard on the budget document. And I know that Susan has learned a tremendous amount of Excel tips and tricks and so forth during the past several months. And we've had a lot of good conversation along the way. So the first exhibit is just a breakdown of revenue and expense and showing what our proposed increases are for those two programs. And so you can see we have our FY18 on the left side, and that was the proposed budget last year. So those aren't reflecting actual results, but what we proposed would happen last year. And then our proposed outcome for this year, and we are planning on a 1% increase in the tuition rate for our preschool program, and a 2% increase in the tuition rate for our vacation station program. One of the components of both of these programs is that we are very inclusive in our approach, and we want to make sure that we can accommodate students who may have special needs to be serviced in either of these programs. We do receive some funding from the Developmental Disabilities Resource Board, or DDRB. However, the DDRB has changed their funding model, so we're not receiving as much funding as we have in prior years. And they are beginning to have conversations about the overall impact of DDRB and how they might, in a sense, broaden or change their mission. And so we're not anticipating that we would see return to the prior funding levels, we may find ourselves at stable or declining levels of support on a go-forward basis. So we're looking to make sure that our programs are inclusive, that we are able to serve all students. That's a question that will need to be addressed as we move forward and if we face future funding challenges. But for the fiscal year 19, we believe that we can continue our program and continue to serve those students. So you can see that we anticipate generating a surplus of revenue over expense of about $174,000 for the two programs combined. The total expenditures are $7.6 million, so it's a relatively small percentage of the overall budget, but the positive news is that we are operating on a little bit better than a break-even basis, even as we subsidize, in a sense, the services for those extra staff members who are necessary to make sure that we're appropriately caring for our students with special needs. So our preschool program, about $2.5 million in revenue, about $2.1 million in expense. Our vacation station program, $5 million in revenue and about $4.8 million in expense. For those DDRB services, we expect to generate about $320,000 from the contribution from DDRB, but we will spend about $660,000. So I noted at the beginning that there's a differentiation in tuition rate increases between the two programs, and that would be because the vacation station program shoulders a greater share of the unreimbursed costs for providing services to students with disabilities. And so in order to even it out, rather than having preschool help to subsidize the vacation station program in a sense, we did differentiate the tuition increases between the two programs. So I'm going to move forward, but that's kind of a general overview. Any questions? Please feel free to just raise your hand and we'll address them as we go along. Mike.
Yeah, I've got a question on that. I understand that the DDRB, that's helping particular students, and that will be helping us in the long run because these students will be funneling into our schools, and earlier we can approach these and correct issues. It benefits us overall.
I would agree with that. So,
but I guess the only issue that I have, or only question I have is that since this benefits the district as a whole, should the preschoolers and the vacation station parents be funding that, or should that be something that should come from the general revenue of the district because it's a district benefit?
We have always taken the approach that we haven't had a directive from the community that these programs should be supported by tax money. And so we've always operated them on a tuition basis, and we believe that the tuition program needs to be able to support them. So we did have, I do think that in a sense, the fact that they use our buildings, and while we do charge the program some overhead costs associated with being in our buildings, there's probably an implied subsidy by us being able to house the programs, particularly Vacation Station, which operates at many of our buildings across the district. But from a funding basis, our approach has always been that the program should be able to support themselves. So outside of the students with special needs, I would say any child who's participating in a early learning program is also going to yield some benefit to our K-12 instructional program. And similarly, children who are involved in the types of constructive activities and learning that takes place within our vacation station program are also going to be better students overall. They have an opportunity to engage in activities that are directly linked to the instruction in the classroom. So even outside of students with special needs, I think all those aspects of our program have a positive net benefit to our K-12 instructional program. And while we're certainly happy to take direction from the board, I think at this point, our basis has been to assume that these programs need to support themselves with the tuition that's charged for students who participate in them. The second exhibit is just the tuition rates, or just a recap of what we talked about previously. We tried to keep the numbers to something that's easily understandable for parents, so we try to make sure that they end in a 5 or a 0. And so you can see that while we said 1%, some of them it's like 1.06% and 1.94%. Those are roundings in order to make the numbers work out correctly. But generally speaking, it's just reflective of the rates that we talked about. Our third exhibit is a chart that shows what the additional cost would be to families. And so there are various programs. You can see there for full day at the top. You have a part-time program, which is 3 days, and you have a full day program. And it would be $72 for the part-time and $108 for the full-time program. Our half-day preschool would be $20 for the Tuesday, Thursday, $30 for the Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The numbers I'm using are annual increases. And then our vacation station program, the AM program would be $60, and the intercession program would be $152. We always try to recap the enrollment within our programs. Very happy to see that we're seeing a positive trend and that we have larger enrollment in our programs. The preschool program is relatively stable. We dipped just slightly below the 700 level, but we feel very good about that. In our vacation station program, you can see a slight uptick in the numbers. And I would say there's probably a little bit of concern, maybe, about the vacation station enrollment, just that we particularly have large enrollments at schools that have large student populations, and we're bursting at the seams anyway, and some of those programs are challenging to make sure we can accommodate all the kids. But we've done a great job of being able to do that. I think the overall takeaway here is just that the enrollment trends are very positive. Just to break out, next attachment just shows the increase of the tuition rates for both our vacation station and preschool programs. And then the final attachment, attachment 6, A, B, and C, show the comparison of those tuitions with other either community providers or other school district providers. And so you can see that we've color-coded those so it's a little bit easy to understand those rates that are higher than what Francis Howell charges and those rates that are lower than what Francis Howell charges. So the ones, the cells shaded in yellow reflect that those rates are higher than what Francis Howell is charging. The cells that are shaded in blue, those rates are lower than what Francis Howell is charging. We do know that our programs operate, particularly our preschool programs, operate a little bit differently than those that are available in the community. We felt very strongly from the inception of the program that our students should be served by teachers who are fully accredited. And so that does make it a little bit more expensive for our program relative to some of the community models. But I do think that we continue to be comparable within the overall comparison as we take a look at both the vacation station and the preschool program. And when we compare them to the full day, you can see there are a lot more blue cells than in some of the, as you relate to the community-based programs. A lot more blue, meaning that those rates are lower than ours, but again, our program is structured differently because we have certified teachers within those programs, and our students are actually working through curriculum that is specifically designed to be aligned with what they'll see as they move forward through our other instructional programs. So those are the basic background pieces. Mrs. Lane, of course, did a tremendous amount of work reaching out to the community to get the information. I would point out too that the rates that we have for the community providers are what their rates are today. They may be changing their rates for the next year as well. We can't anticipate what those would be. We put in what our new rate would be, so we're comparing our new rate to what their current rates are. So there may be a little bit of differential as we move forward through the year, depending upon what the other providers may choose to do with their tuition rates. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have. This will come back as an action item at the January meeting. You'll see basically the same information with a summary memo from me. Thank you very much, and that will greatly help Mrs. Lane, because the earlier that we get information out to the parents, the better it is for their enrollment process in order to be able to advertise and recruit kids.
Plan for that. Board, any additional questions, comments? Nope, looks good. It looks like there's a wide variety of community options, and we tend to be lower than a lot of those, or right in line. So that's good to compare with, as well as the other school districts. So I really appreciate that comparison to know where we stand in the community. All right, great. Next on the agenda is the staffing proposal. Laura, did you give me a bunch of copies here too? Okay. She's got us taken care of. Mr. Hank, take one down, pass it around. Mrs. Simpkins, I'd like to turn this to you.
Thank you. So I am excited to share with you the recommended staffing plan for the 2018-2019 school year. Before I begin, I would just like to remind the board that during our last retreat, we discussed the role of the board in regards to staffing, and we have agreed upon a new format and how we are including the reporting of our overall use of FTEs. And this evening, the board will be presented with details behind any requests for additional staffing for the 18-19 school year. So the Executive Cabinet began discussions of the 18-19 staffing in October, and from those initial discussions, Mr. Delaney and I, our Director of Human Resources, have worked very closely in creating this initial staffing plan. It has been reviewed and modified by Executive Cabinet over a period of several months and many meetings. The staffing model was then shared and discussed with all of the groups listed on the screen, and we did have further modifications that came as a result of those meetings, and that is what we are presenting this evening to you. Each year we request contingency staffing, and these are additional positions above and beyond the staffing report that are placed on hold and only used if absolutely necessary. For example, should enrollment in a certain building at a certain section be higher than what's expected, the contingency staffing already approved by the board allows us to act quickly and address those needs. Only the contingency that is used is carried over to the new school year and included in the beginning FTE balances that you see on the memo. And the contingency staffing that is not used is eliminated. So over the last 6 years, about 56% of the contingency staffing that has been requested has been used, and the remaining has been eliminated. So it is not always, those numbers don't continue to be carried over year after year. And as we prepare for the 18-19 school year, requests for any use of contingency will be considered very, very closely and examined very closely in light of the small amount that's being requested this evening. So we have broken down the presentation into 3 major areas: certified, non-certified, and tuition-based programs, and we'll begin with the big ideas in the certified staffing. So as always, we have reallocated staffing between levels and between buildings due to student enrollment, and this does not change the overall FTEs that we have in our staffing plan. As the board is aware, a 3rd elementary school is being designated as a Title I school, and the overall funding that the district receives will now be divided between the 3 buildings. And the funding that supports, this funding will support additional staffing and additional resources for the students in those 3 schools. Changes in staffing and additional positions will be added using this funding for the 18-19 school year, and that is 2.5 of the FTEs that you see on the memo. A small increase in staffing is also being recommended to address the increased enrollment for our English learning students and those that require some speech and language services. And that is about 1.6 FTEs that we are asking for your approval to add to our overall staffing plan. This slide shows the average class sizes per level at the elementary level that will result within this proposal. And I do show the MSIP 5 standards just as a comparison so you can see where those class sizes will fall. Our average class size is somewhat deceiving as we will have pockets across the district with much higher class size. For instance, some buildings will have kindergarten classes at 22, first grade at 23, second grade at 24 students, third grade at 25 students, fourth grade at 25 students, and some fifth grade sections at 27. So while the averages are there and show you a good idea of across the district, we have not addressed every single one of those pockets that have some higher class sizes. And then with early childhood, really we have status quo staffing in our regular education program. There are no changes in the FTE. And our special education will increase just slightly, and that is due to some program changes. It is a 0.11 FTE that we'll need to add to that staffing to make sure that that program runs smoothly, and that additional FTE will be funded by the DESE grant. We'll move over to support staff, our non-certified areas. And overall, there are just some minor changes to our non-certified staffing. The increase in certified staffing to meet the needs of our English learning students and the change in the Title I funding result in a decrease need for our non-certified support, as our certified staffing will be increased to meet some needs of students. And so overall, we will see a reduction of 1.8 FTEs in our non-certified staff, which equates to 3 positions. Again, we'll have certified staff members working with that group of students instead of our paraprofessionals. And so we will work with within those positions to be sure those folks are taken care of. Some of those positions are already vacant, and so that'll be an easy transition. We'll move over to tuition-based programming. And due to some increases both in early childhood and vacation station programs, the staffing needs to increase as well to meet those enrollment needs. And the recommended increase in staffing will keep our student-to-staff ratios at safe levels as the participation in those programs increase. And the tuition charge for these programs will cover the expense of the additional programs. And there we are recommending half FTE in early childhood and 13 FTEs to be added in our vacation station programming to meet those needs of enrollment. So overall, much of the recommended additions in staffing will be covered from funding such as Title I or special education or tuition-based programming. The district would be responsible for funding 1.6 certified FTEs in our overall salary budget. And I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So board, any questions? We went over this in the HR strategic committee, so I'm familiar with the information. I think I asked Lisa a bunch of questions at that time. So I appreciate the PowerPoint information, kind of putting it into bite-sized chunks for us to truly understand where the impact is. And I think one of the key messages is that from a salary budget perspective, a financial impact perspective, it's 1.6, if I understand correctly, FTEs?
1.6 certified FTEs.
I guess I have one question.
Ms. Jane?
The question that I have is, we just voted a few minutes ago to place a tax levy on the April ballot. I'm assuming that this does not reflect any of the new programs or positions that may be put into place should that levy pass?
Correct.
Okay.
So we would revisit staffing if the levy were to pass, and that was the direction of the board. We would definitely revisit staffing and add those positions to meet pressing needs.
Okay, thank you.
With vacation station, those types of programs, you kind of hold on a few of those to see who shows up in one?
Yes. So
Okay.
we will wait to see what that enrollment looks like before just hiring those positions. They'll be there and ready to go if we need them.
Sure, okay.
Any other questions?
We will bring this forward for an action item in January.
Great, thank you very
Thank
much. All right, board, next on our work session agenda is our academic workshop, and I am going to pass out more paper.
trade all the copies, we killed a bunch of trees
A
tonight.
lot, right. It's good because I can't, I left my glasses. It's good. Okay, and I am going to turn this over to Mrs. Whiteside.
Good evening. Tonight, I have the pleasure of sharing the academic workshop, which is all of the data that is connected to our annual performance report, otherwise known as the APR. The APR is just, they were released and went public in the middle of November, so we weren't able to do it until this December board meeting. So as you can see here from this data that we have earned a high percentage of our APR points historically. And for 2017, we earned 139 out of 140 points. The only place that we didn't earn a point was in subgroup achievement. We had earned 13 out of 14 of our points. So with a final APR for 2017 of 99.3%, which was the same as what we had previously. And I just want to point out that in the workspace, there is a full PowerPoint, which is a lot more slides than tonight. I'm just doing a summary of the key slides of the academic workshop. So there's some other slides that have some supporting data if you want to look at that. So this slide here shows which APR standards are being met by the 2020 target for St. Charles County districts as well as our 3 St. Louis County benchmark districts. You can see that we are meeting the 2020 targets for all students in 3 out of the 4 tested areas. We are not yet performing at the 2020 target in subgroup achievement, but as you can see, that is a trend with other districts as well. We are performing at the 2020 target for our CCR standards, which is the ones that start with a 3, the 3.1, 3.3, 3.4, 3.5, and 3.6. So that is ACT, advanced placement, post-secondary placement, as well as attendance and graduation rate. We added a column there to show how the district, you can earn your points for graduation under your 4-year rate, 5-year rate, 6 or 7-year rate. So we put down how they earned their 30 points under which of the rates. And it's important to note when you look at this chart that APR points don't exactly equal academic performance. So if you were to look at midway through the chart at Pattonville, and you can see on the far right-hand side, they earned 100% of their APR points, but they are not earning at the 2020 target for all of the areas. So they have 53% of the standards being met at the highest level of the 2020 target, whereas in Francis Howell, as well as some other districts, we have 61.5% of the standards met at the 2020 target, which is the highest level. So the APR, because it looks at data over a 3-year period, it looks at data, you can earn it for progress, so continuous improvement over 3 years through what they call a rolling average, as well as a traditional 3-year average called status. And so the APR percent does not equal where they are performing within achievement levels. This slide combines the MAP Performance Index, which we call the MPI, for all 4 of the tested areas for English, Math, Science, and Social Studies into a single MPI score. So it's a way to look at a district in one snapshot. We have the highest single MPI score in St. Charles County, but with the 3 St. Louis benchmark districts we have listed, you can see that Rockwood is ahead of us and Parkway is right behind us. And I will note that there was a testing irregularity with between 2016 and 17 for English 2 and for Algebra 1, so the state omitted that data for this year. So the MPIs for this year that you'll see in combined here and the other slides don't include any data for English 2 or Algebra 1 for any district across the benchmark districts we have listed here, as well as in the state of Missouri. This slide and the next 4 slides are going to look the same, it's just different content areas. So this slide shows how Francis Howell compares with our St. Charles County districts as well as the 3 St. Louis County benchmark districts for ELA. And then you'll see the other 3 tested areas for both overall achievement for all students as well as subgroup achievement. And they are ranked high to low on both sides for all and for subgroup, and then Francis Howell is highlighted there in yellow. So when you look at the left-hand column, which is all students, compared with the right-hand column, you can certainly see the gap that exists between the scores. And so here we have ELA, and again, just a reminder, this does not include for any of the districts, it does not include English 2. And here is math, without, it's Algebra 1, so it would have 3rd through 8th grade math as well as Algebra 2. Science, which is grade span tests in 5th grade, the grade span tests in 8th grade, as well as high school biology. And social studies, which is at the high school level only, which is government. And then this slide puts together St. Charles County districts to compare where we have our, just the APRs you can see there within the St. Charles County comparisons. And as you can see, for those data points, again, they're ranked high to low, so we are still performing at the top of, for MPI in those single areas in St. Charles County. And moving on to our next standard, which is college and career readiness. There are 6 standards for college and career readiness. The first 3 are ACT, then the advanced placement, and then post high school placement. And as you can see, when you look at this overview, we've earned all of our points, and we've earned them at the 2020 target, which is the highest level. So the standard one, I'm going to show you some data next. So I'm just going to show you ACT, but that standard looks at other tests besides ACT, and we're going to look at the highest score for ACT. So when I presented back in August, I shared with you ACT data, but that was our junior ACT data from the district choice test. And so here's our graduate composite ACT score data. And we're looking at the highest score for that graduate. So no matter how many times they took it, the highest score. So this shows here how Francis Howell compares to other Missouri public schools, as well as all schools in the nation. And so you can see that we were flat for the last, for 2016 to 17, but yet we are significantly higher than the public schools in Missouri, as well as all schools in the nation. And then to look at how do we compare with our ACT score for our graduates with the highest score compared to our St. Charles benchmark districts, as well as those 3 St. Louis benchmark districts you can see here where we rank. So we do have the highest score in St. Charles County, but when you look at the St. Louis benchmark districts, 2 of the 3 are ahead of us in ACT for the graduates. And then Fort Zumwalt is right behind us. The other CCR standard was, the second one was advanced placement, and so this data here shows the percentage of students in exams scoring 3+, and I did share this data with you back in August. And so just a quick reminder that the AP score, it goes from a 1 to a 5, and that score tells us how well the student did on the exam, as well as how well they would do in a college level course. So if you get a 3, that's what we consider passing, and that says that you are able to achieve at a college level introductory course. And universities typically would award credit or placement 3 or higher, but universities decide that on their own. And so this data here shows our percent of the students getting a 3 or higher, as well as exams. And so you can see we've had an increase in the percent of our students taking the AP exam that score 3 or higher, as well as our exams. And I'd like to point out that we increased the number of students taking an AP exam by 100 students, and increased the number of AP exams written by 200. And so to have those large increases of students and exams, but yet still maintain and increase the percent of 3s is really a celebration, and is not typical. Sometimes when you see that kind of growth in exams, you don't always see the growth in the 3 or higher. So it's a testament to our students and our teachers in our AP program. And the last part of the CCR standards is post-secondary placement, and I shared this data with you back in August, and it shows that on average about 80% of our students go to a 2 or 4 year college after high school, and this is not what they say they're going to do in terms of the college. This is what the clearinghouse in November says where they are. Some of the other data does come from our follow-up. We have about 10% of our students on average that are employed, and then there's always that small percentage, which is about 4% we can't get a hold of, so we're having trouble making connection for follow-up. So we would think that if we would make connection, that maybe that employment rate might go up. And then we have about steady 2% or so of students that are in the military after high school. And so we received all of our points again in CCR. So for attendance, or if you remember with MSIP 5 DESI changed the way they looked at attendance. It was no longer average daily attendance. The expectation changed to you must have 90% of your students attending 90% of the time. So we call it proportional attendance rate or 90-90. And so we are earning all of our points and at the 2020 target. So on average, our students exceed that expectation. And the last APR standard is graduation. And again, like I said before, you can achieve that with any of the graduation rates from 4 to 7 year. And we achieve ours right off the bat on our 4-year rate at the 2020 target. And so in order to receive your 30 points and at the 2020 target means that you need to have a 3-year average graduation rate at above 92%. And we consistently are well above 92% for our graduation rate. So certainly it is something to be proud of. I added the 5th year graduation rate, and so what that is, it's calculated the same way. It just takes the 4th year cohort and adds any of the 5th year cohort students in it to calculate that rate. So that's why you might tend to see it higher because you're taking the 4-year grads plus anyone that graduated in the 5th year. And so with that data, certainly there are a variety of strengths and celebrations. When you think about that single MPI slide that we had and you think about all the school districts in the state of Missouri, we rank in the top 4% for that single MPI. We increased our MAP scores in all 4 tested areas for the MPI. We increased our advanced placement enrollment, our exam participation, as well as our exam scores. And we have maintained that steady high graduation rate. But certainly with strengths and celebrations, we know there are going to be opportunities for growth. And so even though we are doing well with advanced placement, we know that we have some opportunities to grow. When we looked at some data through our strategic plan, we saw that 80% of our kids, and you saw on this slide, are going to 2 or 4-year college, but yet only about 51% of our graduates are accessing AP. And there's clear data out there that talks about if a student accesses the level of rigor of an AP class in high school, the percent of college degree completion goes up. And so what we'd like to see is closing that gap between our percent of kids going to college and accessing AP. And so that's where we talk about that's an opportunity for growth, as well as the number of students who take the AP exam. We have, on average, about 70% of our students who take the AP exam who are enrolled in the class. And so increasing in that area, you're in the class, we want you to take that final challenge and take the exam. As well as we want to look at our AP enrollment diversity. Does our AP demographics mirror our demographics of our school, and how can we increase those opportunities for our students with support along the way as well? ACT, we've remained flat with our ACT score, so that's an opportunity to increase our ACT composite average. And then the last 2 bullets are from August. I just kind of carried them over. We had looked at reading scores in the 2 areas of opportunity for growth in the 3rd and 6th grade, as well as behaviors. We know there are opportunities to continue to reduce behaviors resulting in suspensions in school or out of school. And so here on this slide, I've just pulled some of the improvement strategies that connect to those opportunities for growth that are in our CSIP. And most of these I had talked previously about in the August data presentation, so I'm not going to go through them in depth. And that is it if you have any questions.
Before you have any questions.
Never mind, it's me. I think it's me.
I turned mine off thinking maybe that was it.
Just a couple things I want to comment on. We should be very proud of our achievement. You can see that we have done a lot with a little, and our MPI, especially our combined MPI scores, are fantastic. But I want you to pay attention to a couple of the warning signs that are in this presentation that Nicole has pointed out. So Orchard Farm has, this is the first time since I have been around, I believe, that we have a St. Charles district that has beat us in our percent of accreditation points. And so while it is a small number, I believe it to be 1 point, we aren't accustomed to being the top of the percentage of accreditation points. Fort Zumwalt hit more 2020 targets on the accreditation. So you've heard me say when I was chief academic officer, that the APR doesn't tell the whole story, the percentage, but I do believe that hitting the 2020 targets and the number of ways that hitting those accreditation points at the highest target is an important thing for all of us to monitor. And you can see that Zumwalt has beat us there. I also would add that our ACT score did increase, but the state average ACT score increased greater than our average. So the gap is starting to close. And we are still well above the state average, and we can be proud of our ACT score, but again, the gap between us and other districts in ACT is beginning to close, and the state gap has closed this year, which again is something that we're not accustomed to. Now, the other thing I want to prepare us for is that these are the data points we have always chased. So our accreditation points and the accreditation indicators are where we have put our primary focus. And while I believe we need to continue to support and protect our accreditation points, I believe with the next strategic plan there are going to be other data points that we're going to be paying attention to. And I'll just use one as an example. So Nicole mentioned that taking one AP class and the chances of improving that you are successful in college. So that might be a data point that we report out on and that we pay more attention to other than our accreditation points out. That might be where our focus is. The percentage of students across the state of Missouri that complete college in a 4 to 6 year time frame is very low. And so while you saw that 80% of our kids start college, the percent of kids that graduate college in 4 to 6 years is low. And that's a trend across the state. But again, I think we need to look at what are the skills they don't have that are allowing them not to complete college. And the strategic planning group would tell you that some of that is some soft skills, that's not necessarily content. It's about management, and I think that is a shift that we need to make moving forward, and another data point that we might need to chase. So all that to say, we're expecting to make some changes in the data that we monitor with our new strategic plan. Stay tuned for that next month.
Thank you, Dr. Harris.
It's me. No, it's me. I have my on button. I just can't touch it. Can you hear? Is it on?
No.
It turns you down a little, so don't touch it.
I'm not gonna touch it. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of data, board. I hope you had a chance to look at it before the meeting as well. Any questions right now?
Nicole, science?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're close to the top. You can't be number one each time, but science has been a concern on slide 7. Are we making changes there? You know, are we looking into science? Is it something, I don't know if it's the 5th grade level, if it was middle school, if it was the high school. Is it biology, you said, performance?
We increase in all of our areas in science, but we are field testing this year, and so our science standards are changing, so we're kind of going to be starting over in science.
So a moving target. But you don't know where it's going to be, okay.
We've moved, the science standards have changed with the revised Missouri Learning Standards too,
Yeah.
and they've, a big bulk of what they adopted is what's called the Next Generation Science Standards, which are heavy in inquiry-based learning with science and inquiry activities. So it's being field tested this year, so we won't have any data next year to share with science. It'll be field tested so across every school in Missouri.
Okay.
And so some of the changes that we've made are really towards the new assessment. And so as we've rewritten our science curriculum to adhere to the new Missouri Learning Standards, and have brought in a consultant that is an expert in the next generation science standards to help our teachers be thinking about how they're teaching science differently with these new standards.
Okay, thank you.
Any insight into why the super subgroup numbers are so much lower just in science? I mean, we kind of are right there with everybody else on all the other subjects, but then on science,
I don't have any specifics to provide, but what we do help the schools with is through the work of David Brothers and Dr. Chris Garland, is they take the individual school map data and look at their subgroup achievement data to provide them with the guidance, because where we are high performing in many other areas, so in our all students, so really looking at your subgroup achievement to determine where you can make impact. And so we break down that super subgroup, because that super subgroup combines multiple subgroups. And so they'll look at that individual subgroup data to see where are we falling short, and then the schools are writing specific goals centered around different subgroup areas and in different contents.
I'll just add, Michelle, that it appears that that is a trend. So if you look at the chart, you can see the top 3 performing districts for all are in the bottom half of districts on the subgroup. So the higher achieving, the bigger the gap in the area of science.
And then my other question was about the diversity. What kind of diversity do we currently have in the AP program? Does it resemble the student population, or, you know, how far off are we?
I've looked at that data. I don't have it committed to memory, but we would be looking at our minority population as well as our fluent reduced lunch population. And so that work has started in some of our schools as we've looked to increase our just AP enrollment, and then taking that next step with the increasing our diversity. But I can certainly, I have that, I just don't have it committed. I can pull it and give it and send it to you.
We certainly have a gap in that area, as do most districts. Ours is not as large as some of the, as the national average. We are working on it, so I know that you might remember a presentation either at a big board dinner or as one of our best practices, where Franks Health Central started to identify students based on prerequisites and data, and then sought the students out to encourage them to attend AP classes. Another support that the academy has put in place this year is an AP supports class. Those classes are being run at very small numbers. They actually pulled from success class staffing in order to get those AP support classes. And that was something the principals identified that students who don't see themselves as AP students or challenge students needed in order to feel confident in taking the classes. So we are taking some steps to diversify our AP population.
And I believe that, if I remember correctly, that is the AP Foundations class and our AP Summer Boot Camp is a best practice in February. So we'll be hearing more about that.
Great. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is superintendent comments.
Yes, I have a few. I know the board's made some difficult decisions, and I know all of you are spending lots of time outside of these meetings thinking through these important choices. I appreciate, especially tonight, you seeking out the answers to your questions prior to the meeting. That has been helpful for us as an executive cabinet. Franks Hall has been again recognized nationally with an AP honor roll distinction, only one of 3 districts in Missouri and 447 nationwide that met criteria. And the criteria really is about the data that Nicole presented. It is about increasing number of students, number of exams, maintaining our pass rate, if you will, that 3+, and then also part of the criteria is maintaining or improving the diverse student population in your AP. So while we're not where we want to be, we are proud that we met that criteria as well. In addition, the district has been selected as the best of school districts in St. Charles County by the readers of the Post-Dispatch, so thanks to all of those that voted for us in that poll. I know many of you were able to attend the CAPS open house at Charter Spectrum. It's exciting to have a flagship business as our partner. Spectrum saw a need several years ago with current workforce and has stepped up to be part of the solution. We appreciate their partnerships. As the programs prepare to go countywide in the fall, Franks Hall will be able to contribute our startup program to the collaborative. Currently, the hiring is in process for a director of the CAPS collaborative. We intend to have decisions sometime in February regarding the leadership of the program. And as you might know, St. Charles has agreed to be the fiscal agent, so they will be officially handling the process of hiring, although we will all be involved. I know many of you were able to attend our dinner and mini concert with our over 20 senior citizens. The group had a great time, and I know many of us are enjoying getting to know them as we're starting to see some repeat faces to those events. Next month, we'll bring you in work session a draft of the strategic plan. The group met last week to put some finishing touches on the plan. I've received several notes from participants this week who were very complimentary of the process and their involvement as we kind of completed the work with that particular group. So here's the part where you need to get out your phones or your calendars. Well, there has been a request for a special joint meeting, school board meeting, scheduled for Wednesday, February 21st. This is like the other joint board meetings we had with the St. Charles City Council and the City of St. Charles. Networking will begin at 6:30 and the open session will be at 7 o'clock. And this year Orchard Farm is hosting. Last year I think we were in St. Charles. Those that will be at the meeting, St. Charles City Council, Orchard Farm, Francis Hall, and the City of St. Charles School District. At the end of this meeting, I want to close with thanking you all for what you do for Francis Hall. It's a difficult time to be on our Board of Education, and I know you have given countless hours to attending events, participating in committee meetings, and preparing for these board meetings. Our students are lucky to have the dedication you show. Have a great Christmas and Happy New Year.
Great, thank you very much. Board, next on our agenda is Board of Education request. Any requests from the board at this time?
I have a request to chat about transportation in January.
And a request to discuss transportation in a working session, okay?
So we've had some informal conversation about bringing to the board a work session. We've had some informal inquiries about how we might decrease our transportation costs to get in that 5%, and we'll be happy to present kind of our current parameters and what areas the board would have to look at if we were gonna look at some decreases as a starting point for that conversation.
Thank you.
I think that's good. I think it's something we continue to struggle with. Okay. Any other Board of Education request? Okay, and so we can get that added to January? Does it fit? Okay, so if we look at our upcoming meetings, the January meeting, we will add a session and our work session to discuss transportation. Any other additions or changes? Okay. Okay, if we take a look at our February meeting. Any additions or changes in February at this time? Okay. So board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mrs. Walker, seconded by Mrs. Lane. By roll call.
Mr. Lane?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Reconvene in 5 minutes in the boardroom.